Happy Monday, everybody. My name's Aaron Conant. I'm the co-founder and managing director here at BWG Connect. We're a giant networking and knowledge sharing group who does exactly that. We network and knowledge share together as a group of brands to stay on top of the newest trends, strategies, pain points, different topics that are shaping the digital ecosystem as a whole. I talk with 30 to 40 brands a week to stay on top of those. It's where we get the topics for our calls. Would love to have a conversation with anybody on the line today. Just shoot me an email, Aaron, A-A-R-O-N at bwgconnect.com. Would love to set aside some time just to chat. And also we might have some upcoming events. We're turning back on the in-person events. Would love to see you in person. If you're in Chicago or New York or any of the tier 1 cities, shoot me an email. We can let you know what our upcoming events there are. Would love to, get back to rubbing elbows and meeting people in person again. Couple of housekeeping items as we get started. At any point in time, if you have a question, you can drop into the question section there. You can drop it into the chat, or you can always email me, Aaron, A-A-R-O-N at bwgconnect.com. And that includes, for the email, an hour after the call, tomorrow, next week, you have any questions in the digital space, you need any connections whatsoever, don't ever hesitate to reach out. The other thing is we're starting 3 to 4 minutes after the hour, and just a heads up, we're gonna wrap this up with 3 to 4 minutes to go in the hour as well. I want to make sure you have plenty of time to get on to your next meeting without being late. With that, we're gonna go ahead and kick it off. The hybrid sales strategy on Amazon has been a topic for a while. I think a lot more brands in the conversation I've been having have been reaching out for a call, kind of a session on this from throughout the network. And I think a lot of that is just due to all the rapid changes taking place within Amazon, some related to the pandemic, some not. But overall, e-commerce profitability, what does it look like? Is it worth going to a hybrid route? Do I just do it with crapped out items? Do I do it with everything? And it's a complicated space. So we got some great friends, great partners of the network over at Retail Bloom. Incredibly unique here because they manage both 1P and 3P accounts and hybrid accounts, but also manage their own business on Amazon as well. So have a really keen look at what does it take to win on Amazon, have a very interesting perspective around profitability and what it takes to be profitable as a whole. And so, Nicole, thanks for being on the line today. I'll kick it over to you if you want to do an intro on yourself and Retail Bloom. That would be awesome. And then we can kind of jump into the content as a whole. Sound good?
Awesome. Thanks, Aaron. Hi, everyone. Thank you for having me today. As Aaron mentioned, I'm Nicole Reich, one of the co-founders at Retail Bloom. As he mentioned, we specialize in helping our brands with whichever Amazon or marketplace strategy is best for them. So high level, like he said, we manage 1P vendor accounts, seller accounts. We have our own seller central account that we do wholesale or revenue share models on that way. And then specifically for today's conversation, are very well versed in hybrid strategies, both from an execution and consulting capacity. I'm personally very excited to dig into this hybrid conversation today because, for one, we've heard lots of interest in it as brands are making Amazon a bigger long-term priority and want to learn about how to stay profitable. And two, we've seen several recent changes, like I'm talking in the last 2 weeks, that have made brands once again ask, if I go hybrid, what does this mean for my 1P account and what are the risks? So looking forward to digging into the conversation with Aaron. As for an agenda today, I have 3 key topics. The first one, doing a bit of a deep dive on the most common questions we get surrounding the hybrid strategy and what you should consider. The second, we're going to walk through a pricing example of what it would look like if you were to partner with a 3P seller versus launching your own seller account. And then lastly, we'll finish up with a brand case study from one of the brands who has successfully implemented the strategy and is now running it through us with our support. So before I get into hybrid strategy questions and considerations, I actually just want to poll the audience and ask, why are you interested in the hybrid strategy model today? And hopefully Aaron is going to share his screen in a second, and you should see, I believe, 5 responses. And if you could just pick those to help me frame the rest of the conversation today, that'd be super helpful.
Yeah, so hey everybody, I just launched the poll if you want to do a kind of a response there. As you see it, that would be awesome. And then just a reminder along the way, you'll have questions across the board, don't hesitate to reach out. Just drop into the question section, the chat, or email them to me, Aaron, AARON at bwgconnect.com. So we'll just give this another, I don't know, looks like we've got almost half the people have voted so far, which is pretty good. As we see this slow down. This is kind of neat. We'll just give this about 10 more seconds, and then we'll kind of take a look at it. I'm about to. All right, it's been a minute. We'll just go ahead and close this one. So show poll results to all attendees. So yeah, so here's the kind of anonymized data here. Why are you interested in the hybrid strategy model? So Nicole, I'm sure you can see this too. I mean, it's—
Yeah, this is awesome. So thank you guys all for providing feedback. I asked this question a little bit because I figured that the first two answers as it relates to profitability or crap out SKUs or MAP pricing would be a hot topic. And if I can take over back on the slides, I actually want to touch on that point first as we think about consideration. So hopefully, Aaron, when you stop sharing, I can switch back to my screen.
Yep. There you go.
Awesome. All right. So the first, what you should be seeing right here is one question that I would like you to ask yourself as you get into what it looks like, why you would want to do hybrid, because it really has helped us on the 3P side get an understanding from the brand of what their big challenges are. So I would like you to ask yourself, am I considering a hybrid strategy due to price squeezing from Amazon, which i.e., right, crap out SKUs, MAP violations, chargebacks, suppressed buy box. And if you are doing that, and if that answer is yes, are they asking for this additional discount for retail price matching purposes? And I know maybe for a lot of you, maybe this is review, but I want to start with the basics just one more time, just so we're all on the same page. What is this price matching problem, and why is it such a big deal, and why is it super important for hybrid approach if you're looking to explore it? So price matching, as an example, what this is, you know, you see this 12-pack of ice. It's sold on Amazon right now for $10.56 from 1P. If you look back to Google Shopping, the reason that they are at $10.56 is because of this website. If this website were to go away, chances are this product, this price on Amazon would probably go up, which is the definition of kind of what we consider price matching on Amazon. Typically, we don't see Amazon leading the price race to the bottom, but we always see them following another third-party seller. So this should probably be review. The part of it that probably isn't review is how this relates to switching to a hybrid. So we hear from a lot of brands that say, hey, you know, Amazon keeps breaking price, they're doing chargebacks. I'm just gonna go to a seller central account so that I can control the price. And what I'd like to be clear about is switching to a seller account doesn't fix your price matching problems, because if Amazon doesn't drop the price, they do force third-party sellers, whether that be you or a third-party seller like us, to still stay competitive. And the way that they do that is through suppressed buy box. So instead of seeing the 1056 here, what the customer sees is just see all buying options. And in this scenario, the reason why that this is so detrimental to the brand and to sales is that when a product goes to suppressed, organic ranking drops, you are unable to advertise on the product, and basically overnight, this becomes one of your worst sellers in the category, which in this example is usually an Amazon's choice. So I just wanted to throw that out there, is that if you are looking at a hybrid model because you don't want to address your pricing at retail problems, it is not going to be a good fix for you. And from a profitability standpoint, it also doesn't look good. So one of the things that I've outlined here is pricing as it relates to 1P versus your own seller account versus working with a third-party seller. So working from the left to the right on the 1P side, in this example, the retail is at $10.56. let's assume that the brand is selling this product to Amazon for $6 a case. They have their typical co-op budget of maybe 22%. So the brand's net sales are about $4.68 a unit. That's pretty typical. I mean, obviously I haven't included any of the advertising or the overhead expenses, but just from a margin perspective at the SKU level, this is what it looks like. Let's say that that didn't work for the brand, so they wanted to launch their own seller account. At that point, you would keep that 1056, because if not, you'd have that suppressed buy box. And the brand would get paid after the product is sold. And in that scenario, Amazon would take their 15% referral fee. And then to get Prime, they'd probably leverage FBA, and that would cost them $9 an order. And you can see here what the brand's net would be. So in this specific scenario, if they said, hey, I want to switch to Seller Central because I think it's going to be more profitable, depending on the pricing on the wholesale side, that isn't the case. They would actually see a net loss. And if they wanted to leverage a third-party seller, it even looks worse, because the seller is going to buy it for a negotiated price, maybe $6, maybe even $5, right? But that seller still has to pay the referral fee and the FBA fee. So at that point, you're going to have a very hard time from a seller perspective finding a partnership that's going to be long-term profitable. So this is one of the first things when we're helping brands understand or providing consulting services on the hybrid strategy. We always do this simple exercise to show them, yes, you can do Seller Central. Yes, it helps you dictate price, but only to a point, right? So what are the options? And what I've given you today are 3 Band-Aids, and then at the end, kind of that best case scenario. And I want to go through these through specifically. So the first Band-Aid approach that we see brands doing is creating exclusive Amazon SKUs or variations. So they say, you know, I see Amazon constantly matching Walmart, Bed Bath & Beyond, Target, BestBuy.com. Well, I'm just going to create exclusive variations just for Amazon, whether that be 3P or 1P, and hopefully that helps all my price matching. And what we have seen lately, especially in the last couple of months, is that yes, sometimes it works, but a lot of the times it doesn't, because we now see Amazon matching based on UPC, title, pictures. If you're doing bundles, they're basically taking the total price divided by the number of units in that order, and you're still getting those price matching issues. So if this is your backup today, or you're thinking it was going to be your backup, just know that this is definitely a Band-Aid approach and may get riskier as Amazon enforces price more. The second one I've talked about a couple times already, is to launch your own seller account for B2C margins. And what I would say from a consideration standpoint is that yes, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, but it also requires full organization support from your warehouse, from marketing, from your sales team, and from your operations team to run that seller account. And we'll get into that a little bit in more detail in a little bit. The third Band-Aid that we see is that they leverage a 3P wholesale or revenue share through us or another party like us. And from a consideration standpoint, that works short term. But as we all know, advertising costs are going up on Amazon, shipping costs are going up, fulfillment costs are going up. So eventually, if we are seeing these price matching problems today, and we're trying to back into it for a short-term solution, we are going to see that margin deterioration, 12, 18 months from now. So I wanted to end this slide of the number one option, and I'm sure you've probably all heard it, is that it is getting even more important to make sure that you have a map and reseller policy across all channels, and understand that this is a long-term project and it requires ongoing support, but it is still the best way from all perspectives to have that healthy profitability on Amazon as well as other websites. So with that, Erin, I want to take a couple of seconds just to see if you have any questions, or if you've gotten any questions before I move on to the next slide.
Yeah, just a couple, and just a reminder, if people have questions, drop them in the questions tab there, or a chat, or you can keep emailing them to me, Aaron, AARON at bwgconnect.com. And maybe we're going to get into this, but the questions are around, staffing up if I'm going to a third party. I mean, and you kind of have it highlighted here, and you mentioned we'll probably get to it, so maybe we'll hold that one. What does staffing look like to go to a hybrid? Other things that are coming in, right? Well, what about, is there any reduction in marketing options, buying reviews, or participation in it? And so maybe we're going to get to all of those, but if not, maybe we can tackle some of them. How would you like to handle it?
Yep.
And everybody keep sending in questions to the questions tab or emailing them to me.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll actually address both of those in the next couple of slides. So if I don't, maybe we can circle back, but I'm pretty sure I got an answer already built in. So thank you.
Perfect. Yep.
Cool. So let's stick on this one MAP policy. And I don't want to get into how to create those. Let's just assume that you end up going down this MAP journey. Everything's good to go. Well, why is it so beneficial from a profitability standpoint? So I'm switching up the product here. When I built this out, the Bucks had just won the NBA Finals. So that is my example for using a basketball today. But I wanted to show you the impact of consistent pricing or potentially increasing the retail and what that means from a third-party seller perspective. So in this example, let's say that we wanted to partner with And1, we wanted to buy product from them, be their third-party seller. What that would look like is at $17.99, maybe we buy the product at $8, we pay that referral fee for $2.69, and then we have our FBA fees at $5.68. So from our perspective, from a third-party seller, on a sale for $17.99 for this product, our net sales are $1.62 per unit. If the brand wanted to do that themselves, it would be a similar scenario. You would just take out this and you'd put in your own COGS, or cost of goods sold. So I put this in here because if we are able to increase the price, right, across the board, add $2 to the MAP price and have the same fees from the FBA because those are fixed, our referral fee increases slightly, but on the bottom point of this is that extra $2 almost goes directly down to the bottom line. And this is why MAP, from a 3P perspective, if you're launching your own seller account or if you're leveraging a third-party seller on your behalf, this is why MAP is so beneficial, because it basically puts $2 more in our pocket to invest in advertising, to pay more for the product, to provide better shipping times, or long-term profitability when it comes to inbound shipping and all the other costs that are increasing on Amazon. This is hopefully a pretty simple way to show you the importance of how beneficial it is to have a good MAP policy and enforce it across all platforms, because without having that MAP policy as a third-party seller or your own seller account, you're still going to see that suppressed buy box. So this is, from a numbers perspective, hopefully a good example of what it would look like once you have gone through that process.
Yeah, so a question comes in, will Amazon follow MAP on the vendor side? They won't adhere to it, right? But they will. I mean, Amazon does want to make money, but they also don't want, they want to also have the lowest price at any point in time, right? So
yeah, yep. So we're actually, profitability obviously has become a much bigger deal for Amazon on the 1P side than it had in several years past, right? So when they're opening up new vendor accounts, they have their profitability margins that they have to hit, which then leads them to the price discounts that they're requesting from the brand. But what I would say is that it depends. We've seen some brands where they really do adhere to MAP. They're doing a much better job than they had in the past. In other scenarios, we've been able to get, for example, Walmart to bring up their price, and then Amazon follows. And as long as Walmart doesn't break again, we haven't had any issues. So I do feel a little bit more optimistic about their adherence to MAP policies today than I did maybe even 2 years ago. But it's not like they're going to come out and say that they're going to do that for you. It's still not in any of their policies that they're going to follow that.
All right, awesome. So another question comes in. What do you say to a brand who has crapped out items? Do they take those to a third-party seller account? So basically, do they go FBA, or do they discontinue the items?
So my question to them would be, why are they crapping out? Are they crapping out because of Amazon matching other sites, right? In that one scenario that I just sent you, or are they crapping out because you haven't approved, because they're requesting a price decrease, right? Get to that core, because if it's crapping out due to the retail price, you are going to have the exact same struggles on the 3P side as you are having on the 1P side. If they are crapping out for other reasons outside of retail price, then that would be a good opportunity to explore the 3P option and see a model like this where you're able to increase that bottom line by going 3P.
Awesome. No, I love it. No, it's great, because that's where a lot of people say, hey, Amazon's price matching this item. That's the reason it's crapping out. It's not profitable. They're not going to raise the price if there's a lower one out there. So they're going to take it to the third party side thinking they can charge, $12 more, but they're not going to get the buy box, right? It's going to go to a third party who's selling it for less. And even if they did, because they priced it lower, now they're not actually fixing the problem. So then you get into supply chain, right? Where's your product going? Who's buying it so cheap and reselling it? So, right, and then it's plugging that hole, right, through a MAP policy, an unauthorized reseller, an authorized reseller policy.
Absolutely, Aaron, great summary. I guess what I would say is that it is the brand's responsibility to set the expectations as it relates to retail pricing. I know that many years ago, right, that it was always in the power of the retailers. They set the pricing. Brands would kind of step back and say, nope, not our deal. Whatever you sell it for is up to you. And unfortunately, that's just not the case anymore.
Awesome.
Cool. Okay. The other question that we get around hybrid strategies is that, hey, I have a great business on the 1P side, for whatever reason, not related to MAP pricing or retail pricing. I want to have a hybrid strategy. And I would do that, but I am pretty concerned about my vendor managers' backlash, right? So I want to talk about this specifically because this has been coming up more in the last 2 to 3 weeks than we have seen probably in the last year. And what I would say is a couple of things. One, it's ever evolving. I am doing a disservice to you if I say, this is how it is and nothing will ever change. That would be completely inaccurate. We are seeing this change on a daily basis. So the risks that you have of setting up your own Seller Central as we see them today. The first one is that we've seen brands try to launch the Seller Central account and just won't get approved. Like they go through the process of an application process and it just gets denied. Sometimes we see brands launch their own Seller Central account. They're live, everything's great, but then when they want to ship products into FBA, they can't. So basically that's Amazon's way of saying you can't have your own seller account, or if you can, I'm going to make it very hard for you to compete. The third thing that we're seeing is more recent now than it has been in the past is this screenshot on the right about how if a brand has a 1P relationship, they are not letting new UPCs and ASINs being created for that brand in a seller account. So what they are telling sellers, whether it be their own brand Seller Central account or maybe a 3P account, is that, hey, Amazon says we already have a vendor relationship with this brand and we want to source those products directly from the brand, and you can't create the UPC. So this has been one of the big concerns that's come up in the last couple of weeks that I would be curious if anyone else on the call who already has a hybrid strategy has seen. There's some ways that we're getting around it, but I do want to bring it up. And what we would recommend if you are seeing any of these things or are worried about your vendor manager coming back to you with some negative feedback is that don't hide it from your vendor manager. I know that that is a little different than maybe what you've heard in the past, but we've actually had some really good recent conversations with vendor managers to say, hey, this is why we're in this scenario. We're doing this seller account because we need backup when it comes to fulfillment, right? Maybe a brand says, I love this 1P relationship, but I already know based on your forecasting, you're going to stock out in Q4, and I want to make sure that there's enough inventory for the customers during the holiday season. Or maybe you're saying that, everything works really well for these core products, but you're not going to give me the pricing that I want on these SKUs, and I'd like to leverage a seller account for those purposes. So we actually have seen some good conversations I'm not going to say that it's, that's what you're going to see, but be open to the fact that the vendor manager understands that this is going on and that sometimes it's better just to be upfront than going behind their back. The other thing I would say is that, if you decide to open up your own seller account and it doesn't work, plan for a 3P backup through a retailer, right? So let's say that you understand long-term, you want your own Seller Central account, but FBA, you're not able to ship units into FBA. Well, there's probably a customer of yours that is already on Amazon or has a seller account, and you can leverage that account so that they can just link to the existing ASINs. And then worst case scenario, know that you may have the pressure from Amazon so much on the Seller Central account that they're going to force you to go back to 1P.
Awesome. The interesting thing, just from the brands that I'm talking to, on a weekly basis, is that it just completely lines up with what you're saying, that there's no true policy within Amazon right now based on size of company, right? It used to be, hey, if you're above 8 to 10 million, you're not going to be able to get away with it. I know brands doing significantly more than that who did launch a a hybrid strategy, and it's, and it worked. Smaller brands who are growing fast who were told no. There's no clear direction, across the board. Like, it's just, you have to try it and figure it out. But I do agree with you. If you're not, they will find out, I guess, is the other side. I've had companies that said, hey, they set up an internet company that's, wholly owned subsidiary of, that sits separate. It's a different LLC, and set up, they try to separate it as far from the parent company as possible, and then set up an LLC that way and try to open up a 3P account under a strange name. Amazon finds it almost every single time, 99.9%. And then you've got an irritated vendor manager. You might as well play the odds and just, before you waste time, effort, money, right? Step one, I would talk to you, Nicole, to see if it's worth doing it or not. And then step two, approach the vendor manager to see if they'll actually let me do it.
Yep.
So, I mean, are you seeing that same inconsistency across the board as well? Like, there's no, it'd be great if somebody issued a note inside Amazon and we were able to get it and see what their policy is.
Yes, it would be great. Probably not likely, but yeah, I think what I'm seeing is that if you are a leader in the category, so Aaron, you mentioned maybe if you're doing more than 8 to 10 million, you're not going to be able to make it work, or anything below that. I don't necessarily think it's tied to a dollar amount as much as it's tied to your position as a brand against competitors in that category on Amazon. So let's just say that you're in a category that isn't very large, but you're the #1 player on the 1P platform, so you're an important vendor for them. Chances are, even it doesn't matter the dollar amount that you're doing, they're going to be pretty upset if you try to go 3P. So I would maybe use that as some, I guess, details as you're looking to consider the backlash from vendor manager.
Yeah, awesome. So another question that comes in: has anyone successfully flipped a 1P dropship to a seller account?
Yes. So that is actually one of the examples I'm going to be using as our case study. The brand that we work with actually did that exact same thing. So I will speak to that. I would be interested in why they have dropship versus just bringing orders in directly and owning it. Most of the time we see it's because they're large LTL items, and that's why they're dropship. So if they'd like to set up a call after this, be happy to share some thoughts on that. Yeah,
I'm pretty sure that's where it's at. Yep.
Cool.
So we can connect you afterwards. You can kind of do, and Michelle, if you want to talk to, any of the other brands that we know have done it, just, ping me afterwards. More than happy to connect you. Yeah.
Cool. Okay, so moving on to the other piece of this presentation, I want to talk a little bit about what it would look like of launching your own seller account versus going with a third-party seller. So let's assume, for purposes of this next piece, we're already through the MAP policies. We already understand the profitability. We already know that we want to have certain SKUs in 1P and certain SKUs in 3P. Now we're just trying to decide, from a brand perspective, do we do it on our own, or do we leverage a third-party seller? So I have this little chart that, oddly enough, Aaron, in one of our first calls probably 2 years ago, we went through, but I feel like it's probably more relevant today than it had been in the past. But I wanted to outline some of the considerations of having your own account, which we call 2P at Retail Bloom, versus leveraging a 3P Seller Central retailer, maybe a customer of yours. So just maybe review, but wanted to point out a couple of things. So from a flow of product perspective, if you launch your own seller account, you are selling to the end consumer, right? If you leverage a third-party seller, you are selling to a customer, they are buying inventory from you, or they are receiving it on consignment through a revenue share model, and they are selling on behalf of the brand. So what it looks like from a consumer visibility is a lot of times it says ships by Amazon because you're leveraging FBA and sold by brand. And if you're working with a third-party seller, ships by Amazon and sold by a 3P seller. We get a lot of questions here from brands that say, well, I think that if from a consumer standpoint, if it says my brand name or a third-party seller name, there's not consumer confidence in that and they're not going to buy. Maybe early on, I will tell you that I think 53% of sales on Amazon today are coming from third-party sellers. So we do not believe that having it be shipped by the brand name or a third-party seller really hurts consumer confidence. The next point is Prime status. So we get a lot of questions of, does conversion drop if I'm not Prime? And the answer to that is 9 times out of 10, yes. If you are going to go to the Seller Central side, know that fulfillment by merchant or providing shipping that is not 2-day or not free is going to significantly impact conversion. So you have to be Prime. I know for bigger items, maybe LTL, the customer is used to maybe shipping windows that are longer or larger, but for the most part, we've seen conversion rates plummet when they are fulfillment by merchant. And a good example of that is when we go the opposite way, fulfillment by merchant to Prime, we see conversion rates go anywhere from 2% FBM all the way up to 20%, 25% FBA. So if you're going to go the Seller Central route, make sure that you are going to be Prime. This one's pretty easy to understand, right? If you're using FBA, fulfillment by Amazon, know that you still own that inventory. It is up to you to replenish. If you send in 100 units and 50 units sell, no one's going to be placing an order to tell you to send in another 50 units. You're going to need experience or people on your team to send in more units to FBA. If you're working with a third-party seller, most of the time, those retailers have inventory replen teams on their side that places in purchase orders with you. Fulfillment by merchant, we already talked about. And then 2 other big pieces that stand out. So ownership of sales tax, when we are working with brands that are trying to figure out whether they open up their own account or leverage a third-party seller, sales tax is always a big one. Marketplace facilitator tax means that Amazon is collecting and paying out taxes, and that's happening in a lot of the states. But there are still several states where it's up to the seller to remit and pay out taxes. So just know that if you were going to open up your own seller account, sales tax is probably on the checklist of things that you're going to have to manage or figure out. If you're going through a Seller Central third-party seller, they can do it for you. And then lastly, customer service perspective, a lot of the B2B brands are not used to answering end consumer questions or, hey, where's my order? Or can I get a return? So this is usually another big standout point that we want to help our brands understand, that you're going to have to open up your customer service team to B2C communications, unless, again, you leverage a third-party seller to do it for you. Cool. Content advertising considerations. So these are really detailed things that we're seeing over the last couple of weeks. If you are exploring a hybrid option, please make sure that you are still using your Vendor Central as your source of truth. A lot of times what we find is that brands want to launch certain UPCs or SKUs in a seller account. Yes, they can be sold there, but what we find for just accurate content, being able to get things live, it's most beneficial when you're still building those SKUs within Vendor Central and then just marking them unavailable. So if you're having problems launching SKUs in seller accounts or in 3P accounts, know that it's probably because you have a 1P account opened, and you should probably start there with building out your content. When you are making the transition, leverage your original Amazon advertising account. So sometimes we find brands want to do sponsored product ads with 3P sellers. Yes, that works, but in order to keep that cost per click low, we recommend that the brand is the one that is has control of those campaigns. You don't have to restart them. You can tweak them. A lot of the times we still want to make sure that the brand has complete control over the spend and sales. And if there are co-op budgets with the third-party sellers, leverage that outside of the ad campaigns. Third one would be consider 3P sellers for co-op advertising budgets, which I just explained, right? So let's say sometimes a third-party seller will invest certain co-op advertising dollars back into the brand. That is great, but make sure that those campaigns are leveraged by someone on your end or through an agency. So it's an outside party that is basically managing all the ad efforts for all the third-party sellers on the platform. And then this is a big point that we are seeing even recently is that keep your brand registry account linked to your vendor account. Don't try to connect it to other seller accounts or your new seller account. We are seeing a lot of issues when that brand registry account is linked to multiple accounts. It's affecting the content, it's affecting some sellers' ability to sell. This is kind of, I would say definitely within the last 2 months, this has become a much bigger issue than it had in the past. So just if you are going through this right now and you're having problems with content, advertising, getting SKUs live, make sure you do some cleanup on your brand registry account and make sure it's only linked to that vendor central account. So brand seller central software consideration. So Aaron, this answers your question about, let's say I want to make my own seller central account. What type of resources do I need? So you need people and you need software. Software perspective. Sorry about that. Software perspective on the seller central side, you're going to need some type of software to connect your ERP system to the seller account. This will allow inventory to flow through. This will allow sales orders, sales information to come through. The second thing, this speaks to the beginning part of the deck about map enforcement and monitoring. Please, even if you don't do hybrid, even if it's just 1P, this should be a huge piece of your goals for even the last part of this year or your budgets for next year is to get a map monitoring software and enforcement tool that basically shows you all of your pricing across all channels. And then if someone does break map, it automatically reaches out to them to say, hey, here's our map violation. Map policy, we see you violated on this website.
Yeah, and really quick, if anybody needs like recommendations there, just shoot me an email anytime, Aaron, AARON at bwgconnect.com. We have enough brands in the network recommending, we can point you in the right direction really quickly. There's 101 of these people out there, but there's only a few that work really well. So more than happy to help people find, both the software, but also if you need to set up a map policy, those are important as well. So anyway, just shoot me a note and we'll get it.
Cool. Let's say that you don't have, there's some SKU sets that you don't have mapped. Maybe it's a discount line that you have, a repricing software. If you're never going to implement a map strategy for those SKUs is going to be really important. And what it's going to do is a very similar thing to what Amazon does. It looks at all the pricing on Amazon and on other sites, and then it reprices you either up or down so that you win buy box. So again, I would say that this is a Band-Aid approach, but if you aren't going to do a map policy, you're going to need a repricer to stay competitive instead of manually updating price based on what the buy box price is. PIM tool, the product information management tool, I've talked about this a lot. That basically keeps all of your product information in one place, and then you're able to use that tool to link it out to different platforms. So it would link to your vendor central account, it would link to your seller central account, as well as any other marketplaces that you have, Walmart, Best Buy, Target. Aaron, again, if you don't have recommendations for that one, I definitely do. So we'd be happy to help you out there. And then lastly, an FBA reimbursement tool. This is a big sticking point that comes up when we're doing consulting projects with brands, is that brands don't recognize that when you send inventory into FBA, sometimes products get lost, and they are lost so often that there are dozens of software companies or service providers out there that help you chase down lost inventory and get reimbursed for that inventory. So Typically, they only charge a percentage of what they get reimbursed for you, so it's really a no-brainer. But I would say that early on, if you're doing FBA, is something you definitely want to look into. Some other nice-to-haves would be an advertising software tool. This is regardless of 3P, Seller Central. You can also leverage these on the 1P side, helps automate those campaigns, use AI, some of them do, but also just really helps you consolidate the information for your campaigns and make decisions a little bit easier than it is in their own UI. And then this one is a really important one too, is your organic keyword, market share, and product tracking tools. So another question we get all the time is, if I go from 1P to 3P, what should I expect in from a sales perspective or a market share? Does it fall off? Does it improve? How long does it take? I would say that a lot of that depends on the inventory that Amazon has or the inventory that rogue sellers have. But if you want to show an ROI from a complete brand perspective and not just your account, there are tools out there that can help you show your market share versus competitors and give you some estimates of what your total brand is doing on the platform versus others. So if you have any questions on that, would be happy to talk about it. But this has been really helpful when helping certain employees within a brand build a case to go to leadership to say, hey, this is why this is important and this is what we should expect from an ROI perspective.
No, I love it. Just from the standpoint of everybody thinks that they can just flip it over and start rolling, it's going to be easy. Not that it's super incredibly complicated or hard, but you need the right tools along the way. So no, this is awesome.
Cool. And then before I flip over to the brand case study, I want to address the resources from employee perspectives because I don't have a specific slide on that, but I think it's worth mentioning. A lot of the times we find is that the team that you have built out internally to support a 1P business is great for purchase orders, line reviews, that initial order with a vendor manager, A+ pages and content, but those employees don't always have the experience on the seller side. So I want to point that out, that it's not that you can't repurpose those employees to support both platforms, but recognize that this whole repricing suppressed buy box becomes really real when you have this great 1P business and all of a sudden it completely falls off for those SKUs that you turn on to Seller Central. So a lot of times we find is that the teams internally need some training on the buy box and the importance of it, right? They need some training on how to do FBA replenishment. They need training on performance metrics, going into the seller account daily and making sure that you're hitting your shipment rates, your quality rates. So I can talk about those a little bit. But I would say outside of like running the accounts, the content, the advertising, building out the SKUs, all of that is pretty similar. So we're able to help our brands that have that team internally, train them up to then support the Seller Central account. But please don't make the assumption that they're just gonna figure it out on their own, because it is a little different and does take some adjusting. Okay, brand case study. I wanted to talk about what we've seen. Hopefully this answers the question early on of what does it look like when we do this the right way. So using Howard Miller as an example, they are the #1 clock brand, I believe, in the world, and one of our key partners on Amazon. And we had partnered with them in August of 2019 to implement a hybrid strategy. So in that scenario, from day one, we picked up all of their small parcel items and leveraged FBA. So at the time in August 2019, they had a drop ship Vendor Central partnership. They had a Vendor Central where Amazon was owning and picking up the inventory. And then they were leveraging us for those smaller items and we were putting them into FBA. From an action perspective, the first thing that we did was we helped them launch and create their MAP and e-com policy, and we optimized over 860 product detail pages. And then we invested 5% of sales back into advertising. So this started again from 2019 and is ongoing. A big point out on this advertising budget of 5% of sales. Sometimes we get asked, how much of my, how do I determine my ad budget as a percentage of my total sales? Please keep in mind for Howard Miller that they have really high retail prices. So advertising as it relates to sales is much lower, and it's much more beneficial than maybe a CPG brand that has retail around $10 to $15. So understand that you may have to have a higher advertising budget. But from a results perspective, this is what we've seen, which has just been absolutely phenomenal. So from 2019 to 2020, collectively across all platforms, they saw 150% increase in sales year over year. And yes, there was some benefit from COVID to that, absolutely. But we are actually on track even this year to grow 131% versus 2020. So we still, you know, the growth has fallen off a little bit, but we're still seeing it obviously be much larger than last year. And on top of that, we've been able to decrease their MAP violations by 50% per day over a 7-month period. And what that looks like is like 200 violations per day. And that is across all platforms. And this was at the help of Howard Meller implementing a MAP strategy, us being able to monitor and enforce it. And with that, we've actually been able to remove 311 rogue sellers on Amazon. So this is really what I would say is a perfect case scenario, right? Where we're able to control all of the content, control all of the advertising, really dictate what this pricing looks like, right? And we get to set those prices based on the pricing that we have with Howard Miller and their MAP policy. But on top of that, their 1P business is also really growing. So they looked at the catalog and said, what makes sense to move to Retail Bloom? What makes sense to keep with Amazon? And the exercise we did to figure that out was that chart that I had showed several slides ago to show you the difference of fees of selling it 1P versus selling it through us, looking at the referral and the FBA fees. So it's worked out really well for them. We continue to move SKUs over to us slowly. Their catalog is absolutely mammoth, but it's worked out for them. And I would guess that we'll continue to do that probably for the next 12 months. And with that, we revisit this every 6 months and say, okay, what makes sense now? What changes are we seeing on the 1P side versus the 3P side? How do we leverage 1P when we're seeing FBA limitations? So it's definitely an ongoing conversation with Howard Miller to say what is best for the brand, what is best for Retail Bloom, and then what's going to give the consumer the best shopping experience.
Awesome, love it. So a question comes in, you know, what are you doing to get items listed that are gated right now on the 3P side? I have 2 refurbished items that we used to sell, but now can't list them. They won't let me list 3P because they have a vendor relationship. But I think going back to that little snippet you put up there, you've got a vendor relationship with the company. Is that when they need to talk to a buyer to get them listed?
Yeah, so if you are seeing this, whether for, you know, used or new, you're not going to get, we haven't had any luck getting away from this. We've tested it through brand registry. We've tried to make sure that it was set up correctly. Ultimately, in those examples, unfortunately, we've had to go back to the vendor central side and either offer the product to 1P to get it listed, or to at least build the SKU through vendor central, shut it down, and then link to it on the 3P side. So a lot of times what we're finding is that on a seller central side, you can link to the ASIN, right? You can sell inventory, you just can't create the UPC.
Awesome, and I can connect you with them just for, you know, a conversation as a whole, because that's going to go a little bit more in depth as a whole. In the example you show a list price and then your lower MAP price, what is normal for a MAP price? Keystone or lower in your experience?
I just want to get to, sorry, that slide, I'm bouncing around just a little bit. So in this example right here, it depends on the category. So I guess that what I'll speak to what we're really familiar with in apparel or in sporting goods category. A lot of times that's Keystone. I would say in the soft, like hardware or electronics, it's way different, right? Like brand sells, retailers only making 30 points. So I can't actually speak to what I would propose your MAP policy be based on your wholesale costs until I understand what category you're in and also give you some ideas of what the competitor landscape looks like, because it really depends on the category that you're in.
Awesome, and Mike, more than happy to connect you with Nicole afterwards, so you can do a deep dive as a whole. So I see we've probably got about 4 minutes left here, maybe 5 if we push it a little bit. Other stuff that you want to make sure that we get to, and a quick reminder to everybody, you want to have a follow-up conversation, more than happy to put you in touch with Nicole. I'd love to jump on the phone with you as well, pick your brain, see what's topics are kind of the top of mind for you right now. Also, you want recommendations across the board on any service providers, never hesitate to reach out. More than happy to kind of give you what the network as a whole is kind of saying. Obviously, Nicole and Retail Bloom are at the top here for overall digital strategy on Amazon, for sure. But anyways, yeah, Nicole, thoughts here as we got a few minutes left?
Yeah, so the last thing I want to just point out is from the 3P perspective, if you have your own seller account or you're leveraging a Seller Central account from a retailer, know that the quantity restrictions or the FBA restrictions for Q4 prep is not going away. They're getting a little bit better versus 2020 in COVID, but there are still significant delays that we're seeing in receiving times. We are seeing restrictions across the board on the number of units you can send into Amazon, which has made Q4 prep really difficult. There's some different ways to get around that I'd be happy to talk about as it relates to different offerings or seller fulfilled prime as backups. The other thing that we're seeing on 1P side right now is that they aren't purchasing enough inventory to get them through all of the holiday season. So a lot of brands are saying, hey, I think that Amazon's going to stock out again, or maybe I'm in a non-essential category, and with COVID being a bigger deal again, what does this mean for my brand? Am I going to stock out from the front end, and what's the impact of that? So another great way to maybe use or test out the hybrid strategy, if you think you're going to stock out on 1P, maybe this is a good way to test out another third-party seller or launching your account. So if Amazon does stock out, you still have an offering out there. So that would be my last couple of points that I'm seeing as it relates to supply chain right now.
Awesome. Yeah, I love it. I mean, I think you nail it too. The other side of this is as we go into Q4, Amazon did not build enough fulfillment centers over the past year to be able to handle the inventory that you're going to want to put in there, whether you're 1P or 3P. Find a digital age 3PL, somebody that can do drop shipping, find a Retail Bloom that can help you with the inventory as a whole, because it's going to get really crazy. I think if you just think about last year as a whole, the same things were happening and they're going to be repeated again. But once again, are there last minute key takeaways as we wrap up in the final minute here?
I think that's all I have for right now. If anyone does have any other questions, happy to hop on a call after this. And if you are seeing those limitations from creating new SKUs, we are testing out several different things on our end, and we'll be sure to post a blog. So keep your eyes out for that once we find a more streamlined solution, I would say. Right now, it's a lot of testing. Awesome.
Well, love it. Well, I would encourage anybody, if you're looking to learn more about this, or if you're actively going down the path, have a follow-up conversation with Nicole and the team at Retail Bloom. They're crushing in this space. They're helping tons of brands out within the network as a whole. And they're all around fun people to talk to, which is great. If you're looking for, follow-up with a recording, just email Patrick at bwgconnect.com. You can go to the BWG Connect website and just find this event. It'll probably be a week out. We'll post it there. But with that, I'm going to say, hey, thanks to everybody who was able to dial in today. Thanks, Nicole, for your time. Thanks for the great information as always. Thanks for being so open to sharing and let us, throw a ton of different questions at you across the board. Everybody, look for a follow-up email from us. Let us know if you're in like Chicago at the upcoming Retail X. We're going to be there with some in-person events. If you're out in Boston, let us know. Those are the next ones that are popping up. Would love to have a conversation with you around any of that. With that, I think we're going to wrap it up. Hope everybody has a fantastic Monday, a wonderful week, and look forward to having you on a future event. Thanks again, Nicole. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.